back, and we're going to be talking about the winter weather threat for this Sunday. We had some audio issues on that previous live stream, so we're going to wait for everyone to join in as we get this streaming out, whether that's through Facebook or other online sources like YouTube or the News 19 app. So if you're watching from any of those, thanks for tuning in, and we're going to talk about what you can expect as we go throughout the next 24 to 48 hours. So with that being said, as everyone's coming in, make sure to leave your comments, your questions down below. We're going to try to answer everything as we go forward. But overall, it's been just a gloomy day here across the Midlands. We've been seeing a lot of cloud cover on the cooler side as well. And as you go tomorrow, of course, a lot of changes in the forecast. We're going to detail what you can expect. So let's get right into things and talk about what has changed, what has remained the same in the forecast. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm News 19 meteorologist Corey Smith, and as we go into Sunday, the chance of a wintry mix, some freezing rain here across the Midlands. And really, as we go north of I-20, that's where we expect the biggest impacts. We're going to talk about what you can expect going forward. But first, let's take a broad picture of what's going on. These are the winter weather alerts out for really the entire southeast, including northern Georgia, most of South Carolina, and North Carolina, all expecting impacts from the system here closer to home in the Midlands. Well, you can see we have two different types of watches and warnings out. The first being a winter weather advisory, and that's 4 counties pretty much along and to the south and east of I-20. And that means that we could have some hazardous road conditions as you go overnight and into tomorrow. Along with that, the chance of some freezing rain building up on trees and elevated surfaces. But as you head north, like we mentioned, the impacts are probably going to be a little bit bigger, and that's why we have an ice storm warning. That's going to be out from tonight through Sunday here, as we expect more accumulating freezing rain, which could cause some more widespread issues in those counties. So let's talk about our system right now. That's out to the west, right over Arkansas and Louisiana. You can see some snow on the back end of it over Oklahoma and Arkansas and even southern Missouri. Some downpours as you head towards the southeast. Here closer to home, things like we mentioned have been quiet today, mostly cloudy conditions. Some snow showers being reported in the southern Appalachians, but other than that, things have been pretty quiet in the region. But as the system continues to work towards the east, we're going to see things ramp up as you head a little bit later on in the night. So with that being said, let's talk about at least the primary thinking here. And that's, like we mentioned, along and south and east of I-20 is where we expect some icing to occur in the form of sleet and freezing rain. But once you head north, the chance of some significant icing, and that's why that ice storm warning is out. So let's walk you through what we can expect, at least with our latest models, as you go throughout the next 24 hours. You're going to see this is 10 p.m. tonight, cloudy skies, and we're going to be a little bit on the breezy side as well. And you'll see rain starting to cross the Georgia border into South Carolina. And I do think that we start off a wintry mix, even some rain here across the Midlands. It just depends at where our temperatures are at that point. But as you go through your Sunday morning, making the switch over to wintry precipitation, whether that's sleet or freezing rain, really just depends how cold I think we get here at the surface. But overall, I think we do change over to freezing rain. This is 6 o'clock in the morning, likely dealing with that freezing rain. And one thing about it is it looks like normal rain, but our surface temperatures are cold enough for things to freeze. And that's where we run into issues. And it looks like those conditions could last through the late morning hours. So this is 8 o'clock in the morning. And then by midday, we start to see some warmer air surging to the north here. And that warms us up, at least I think along and south of I-20, we get above freezing. And that's why the impacts are expected to be a little bit lower compared to our northern counties, which stay in this wintry mix category here as you get into the early afternoon. Now on the back end of the system, as it pushes through in the afternoon to early evening hours, we could see a couple snowflakes moving through the Midlands and especially our northern and western counties, but not expecting any accumulating snow with this system. This is primarily an icing threat for the Midlands. So just have that in mind as you go forward, as you go into your Monday. The back end of the system bringing some pretty windy conditions, but at least we get some sunshine back as you go into your Martin Luther King Jr. holiday here. So a chilly but sunny day to start off the work week. So let's take a closer look across the Midlands and what we can expect as we go throughout the next 24 hours. And you're going to see That rain, like we talked about, increasing as we go throughout the night. This is midnight. Temperatures still in the upper 30s to around 40. So we're above freezing. So at that point, not expecting any wintry precipitation. But as you get a little bit later on the night, notice our temperatures are going to start to drop as you go through the morning hours. We're in the middle 30s by 2 a.m. and upper 30s as you head south of I-20. But eventually you make that flip over to wintry precipitation, whether that's sleet or freezing rain setting up. And we're expecting mostly freezing rain with this event as you go overnight. This is 6 a.m. Temperatures are going to be right below freezing. So we're talking near 30 to the upper 20s. And this is where we could run into some issues. I think once you get around 4 a.m., towards the late morning hours, it's when we see our biggest impacts here across the Midlands. And that's because we have some pretty heavy precipitation, and our temperatures, as you can see, stay below freezing. And that's where we could see ice start to accumulate on roads, on overpasses, trees, and power lines. That continues through about midday. And then notice we see that warmer weather surging from the south. So Orangeburg at 37 degrees at 11, Sumter at 34. And by 1 o'clock, most of our communities are above freezing. Columbia at 36, Saluda sitting at 33, and Camden at 35. As we head towards 3 p.m., most of the steady precipitation is done at that point. We could see a couple snowflakes mixing in as you head around 3 to 6 p.m. But like we mentioned, not expecting any accumulating snow on the back end. It's just going to really be windy and cold. Now, one thing to look towards on Monday morning, while we have all this wet weather, temperatures are going to get close to freezing. You can see our model here actually going into the middle to even upper 20s. And if that's the case, black ice is going to be possible, if not widespread, in some of our communities for the Monday morning commute. So something we'll have to watch for as you go forward. Of course, Monday looking pretty nice compared to what we're expecting tomorrow. It's going to be windy but sunny. Temperatures on the cold side, though, we're only expecting to get into the 40s for highs, and then another chilly night for your Tuesday morning. So let's talk impacts, what we can expect across the Midlands, and let's talk first off about freezing rain, because it doesn't take a lot to see impacts really start to add up. If you see anywhere from between 1/10 and 1/4 of an inch of ice, we're already starting to see the bridges and overpasses get slippery. There'll be ice accumulating on trees and power lines, and you'll have it on your car as well. So you'll have a layer of ice on your vehicle as you head out, which probably wouldn't recommend if the roads are getting a little slippery. As we see these increase, this is 1/4 to 1/2 inch, that's when things really start to get dicey. We're going to see some tree damage, roads themselves become icy as well, and then also scattered power outages possible. Now, the one thing we're concerned about is the chance of getting over 1/2 inch of ice, which I think is definitely possible as you head north of I-20 towards Newberry and Fairfield counties. We could possibly see some isolated areas get close to that 1/2 inch, and that's where we could see widespread tree damage as well as widespread power outages due to the weight of the ice on those items or objects. So that's something we're going to really have to keep an eye on. If we start to see those icing amounts really start to get up as we go through the morning hours, that could cause some issues. And you can see one model here putting out a pretty healthy amount of ice. I think this is probably the worst case scenario. I think north is really where we're going to see the worst of the icing, but just wanted to paint a picture of if we see the worst case scenario, this is probably what it looks like, anywhere between 1/4 and 1/2 inch of ice across the Midlands. More realistically, though, you can see mostly north of I-20 where we pick up that 1/4 to 1/2 inch of ice, and that's why we have the ice storm warnings north of I-20 and not south. So really looking like an icy event going forward, and it's going to be mainly in those morning hours. You can see the snow threat well out of the viewing area. We could see a couple flakes towards the afternoon, but really all about that icing. You can see a moderate to heavy impact category here as you head north of Columbia. As you get towards Newberry, towards Fairfield, and even Kershaw and Sumter counties could see some heavier ice accumulations. And then as you head up, of course, towards North Carolina, that continues as well. So it looks like the possibility of widespread power outages, not only in the Midlands, but across the central North Carolina region, are possible as we go forward throughout the next 24 hours. So let's break down every portion of the Midlands and talk about what we can expect. Of course, where we see the biggest impacts in the northern Midlands, that's going to be north of I-20, where we could see some significant icing from freezing rain, sleet, as well as some accumulating sleet as well. If we get cold enough, I think we could see a short portion of maybe some accumulating sleet, which would make road conditions much, much worse. So if we see that happening, could be a not too good, well going on the roads up there. But as you head south, things looking a little bit better in the central Midlands, that is including here in Columbia. Well, we're going to see some ice and some freezing rain, but not as much. So expect possibility of some scattered power outages as you go into tomorrow morning. And of course, bridges and overpasses, the first things that always freeze, are probably going to have some issues as you go into tomorrow. As for the southern Midlands, pretty much areas to the south and east of I-20, well, mostly on just rain, a cold rain throughout the day. We do have some freezing rain in the early morning hours, but I think the impacts do remain limited at best in that part of the viewing area. So let's talk about the timing once again and what you can expect. And this is mainly going to get going right around 3 to 4 o'clock in the morning. You can see that rain really picking up as you go through the morning hours. Around middays when we start to expect things to quiet down as we see that drier air behind the system. So with that being said, we also have some pretty cold temperatures with the winds blowing and us being around freezing. Wind chill is possible in the teens, at least in the morning hours. After that, it does start to feel a little bit warmer, but of course the biggest issue is going to be the icy conditions, which should set up right around 5 to 6 a.m. when we really start to see things going. Past that, well, that continues through the late morning hours. Of course, the further north you are, the later that transition back to warmer weather comes. So if you're in the northern counties, around noon to 1 p.m. is when we could start to see things transition to at least a little bit warmer in the way of conditions. We do have the chance of some light flakes at the end of the system, so maybe some snowflakes, but nothing accumulating as we go throughout the system. Take a look at the 7-day forecast going forward past this event. Well, it's going to be a cold and windy day for your Monday, high of 44 degrees, so not much better than the 39 we're expecting tomorrow. And after that, we're on the colder side as we go throughout the rest of the week. But then we're expecting an Arctic front to move through, and by far, I think the coldest air of the season pushes in towards the end of the week. We're going to have to keep an eye on that part of the week as we see that cold weather, maybe even some teens in portions of the viewing area as we get towards Friday and Saturday. So looking like a pretty chilly setup. So as we go forward, of course, we're going to have more updates. The whole weather team is going to be in over the next few hours, giving you the latest updates. You can follow me on Facebook or Twitter. But of course, I think we could use you guys the best is WLTX Weather Watchers Facebook on Facebook. And the reason for that, you can send in your pictures. Let us know what's going on out in your backyard during the event. And of course, you can always download the News 19 app and get the forecast for free. So we have Tony standing by. He's helping with some questions. What are people asking out there?
Well, I think the big question is just, power outages and also the black ice potential for Monday morning. So I guess if you could go over that just one more time.
Yeah, and so what we're looking at, and I'll bring up the graphic again, just breaking down that threat for the icing across the viewing area. So north of I-20, once you head towards Fairfield, Newberry, northern Saluda, northern Kershaw, is where we could see that significant icing. So that's where we're talking about a quarter to a half inch plus, and that's where we could see widespread power outages. And the reason why I think it's going to be exacerbated a little bit is we're going to be breezy, winds gusting up to 30 miles per hour. So you add all that weight from the ice on the trees and the power lines, and then you throw in some breezy conditions, and then you start seeing trees falling down, power lines falling down. So that's what we'll be watching there. I think for the rest of the viewing area, sporadic power outages, roads will not be good regardless, I think, for most of the viewing area tomorrow. So if you don't need to go outside, I'd probably try to stay indoors as we go forward with that. As for the black ice, that's going to come Monday morning. So we're seeing rain in the form of freezing rain falling throughout the day. That's liquid on the ground. Temperatures are expected on the back edge of the system to get down to around, if not below freezing as you go into Monday morning. That could last through about, I would say, 1 to 2 hours after sunrise. After that, we do expect roads to get better. So if you're heading out Monday afternoon or even lunchtime, I think driving conditions should be better by then. Okay, yeah, so it looks like that's all the questions we have right now. Of course, like I said, you can join the WLTX Weather Watchers Facebook group, and we'll see you guys coming up tonight on our latest newscast, so thanks for tuning in.